2NURFM, a broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.
It's 21 to midday, and this time last week, I don't know whether Professor John O'Connor was very excited about it, was International Pi Day, and we're not talking P-I-E, are we?
No.
No, we're talking P-I. And for most people who were happy to leave it behind at high school mathematics, it's something that affects us on a day-to-day basis. Good morning. Do you get excited about pi?
It's always a great reminder, and I think we should explain why it was Pi Day, because if you use the American calendar, you put the months first and the days second, so it is the third month and the 14th day. It doesn't work with our calendar because the 31st day of the fourth month doesn't exist. So anyway, so the Americans started this thing, and yes, they took 314, which is an approximation of pi. And it's always a great reminder of how important pi is in our everyday lives. But before we get tied up with that, what is pi? And many people probably remember they said something at school about it, and may well have forgotten. But what it is if you wrap a rope around a drum and then roll that out and then measure it and look at the diameter of the drum, you'll find that it's not a simple ratio. It's not 2 times or 3 times or 4 times. If you did it around a square, it'd be 4 times.
Yep.
Very easy. But it's 3 and a bit. And the question is that bit. And there are approximations. People might remember. In fact, I know people who will adamantly tell me it is 22 over 7. But you see, pi is an interesting number because it's one of a collection of numbers which can't be expressed as a ratio of 2 integers.
Yes.
I mean, it's called irrational for that reason. See, mathematicians deal with irrational things as well.
On a daily basis every day, yep.
So it's an irrational number. It can't be treated as a simple ratio. And there are better ratios in that. 333 over 106 is one. 355 over 113 is another. Now, all of these become better approximations, but they just go on and on. It never repeats itself. That's why it's irrational. If it repeated itself, we could actually come up with a ratio, and people actually vie for the number of places they can get it to. I can remember when I was a student, I found a book with it printed to 100,000 decimal places, which is great. Why would you have a book of that? Because it is such a random sequence of numbers. It's a great way of getting random numbers. If you don't have something that generates random numbers, you go and look at the sequence, page 75, start from there.
So are you telling me the local ham and seafood raffle at the pub is using pi to make sure who gets their tickets called?
You might think that. I couldn't possibly say that. But I think the record at present is 13 trillion.
Wow.
But of course, if you really wanted to know it that well, you could always consult our expert on campus, Laureate Professor John Borwine, who's actually made a career out of pi. But and he often gives international presentations on Pi Day. But let's look at the ways it affects us. Why
on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. Yeah. Why are mathematicians so excited? Because it affects so many things. It affects surveying. So anything to do with where your house is or where things are, it's part of that. It's part of trigonometry. It's one way that it affected everyone's lives at one stage, but less so as technology has moved on, is the link between the period for a pendulum clock
and a grandfather
and
clock.
The length. Yes, the old grandfather clock. That has pi in it, the link between the time and the length. So pi was in there in everyday life, but people didn't realise it.
It's one of those things that must amaze mathematicians when people at high school or even getting into the university go, oh, look, I'm never going to need algebra again. I'm never going to need trigonometry again. And you go, if you only knew the truth.
Well, it's hidden in so many places. I mean, anything to do with circular motion, it's got pi in it. Now, circular motion is not just things going around in circles, but it's a periodic motion, and electromagnetic waves are periodic motion. And so if you analyse those electromagnetic waves, if you have anything that does it, which is what your radio does, it's actually picking out this frequency right now.
Oh, and I said I'd never need pi. How wrong was I as well?
But even more so, Wi-Fi. Everything's running on, well, not everything, there's so much is running on Wi-Fi. It relies on that periodic motion, that picking out certain periods, picking out signals, and pi is buried in that as well. So it's in so many parts of our life, it's almost impossible to work out all the different ways it is, because it's just embedded in things so deeply.
Fantastic. And if you remember seeing the movie Apollo 13, when they had to slingshot around the moon to get back to the Earth, pi was in full force there as well.
And in fact, we can go to social context too, because there are poems written where the length of the words are the digits of pi up to a certain number. But the one that impressed me most of all was there is a book of 10,000 words written specifically so that it is the digits of pi to 10,000 places.
Would that be someone who maybe needs a hobby?
Well, I think that's very impressive. You're probably right. They need to get a life, but still, what a life they've had. I mean, can you imagine trying to write something and be constrained by the length of words like that?
Mathematics, the pure science. And what we're going to do also, if you've got some questions about mathematics, you're the man to answer the question, or physics, anything at all you've got to do is drop us an email, todd@2nurfm.com. So if you've got a question for John, then drop us a line and I guarantee you he will be able to answer it. Thank you very much. And again, happy Pi Day for last week in America, but we kind of took it on board in Australia as well.
Thanks, Todd.
2NURFM, it's Professor John O'Connor, School of Mathematical and Physical Sciences.